Hey everyone, my name is Sam and thanks for checking out this video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and give the video a thumbs up and turn the little bell notification thing on. I don't know why I do this every single time, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm super excited to do this video. I've been kind of like hoarding things to do in this video for quite a few months now, I think. So, I want to talk about some Canadian authors. Also aware that most of the people on the internet really seem to be US-centric. Or like really just everything in the world is US-centric. So if you're not Canadian, or maybe you just couldn't point out Canada on a map, we're just north of the United States. We're the second largest landmass in the world, only behind Russia. But most of the people don't live in the majority of our area because it's all just frozen tundra most of the year. We've had legal same-sex marriage since 2005, I think. We have probably one of the most attractive world leaders at the moment, Justin Trudeau, and his wife Sophie is pretty attractive too. We brought poutine to the world. I don't even know if that's actually true, but we're known for poutine, which is fries, cheese curds, and gravy. We're also known for beaver tails, which is like deep fried dough with like cinnamon sugar on it, and you eat it when you're like skating on the canals. We're known for hockey, even though I don't think it's been a while since the Canadian teams won the Stanley Cup. We have one NBA team, the Toronto Raptors. I don't think they're any good. Curling is a real sport here. Oh, and you all pretend to know who we are all of a sudden when the Olympics happen, especially the Winter Olympics, because we're really good at hockey and figure skating and snowboarding. Really anything with like ice, we seem to excel really well at. Oh, on top of that, Toronto is not our national capital. That seems to be a big one that Americans specifically seem to get wrong. That is the capital of Ontario. Our capital is Ottawa. We speak two languages, English and French, but you'll be lucky to find anyone who could speak both. Our national sport is actually lacrosse. Didn't know that. It's just something else that we stole, really. We have socialized healthcare. So when I go to the doctor, I don't have to remortgage my home, which is always awesome. Having worked in the tourist industry for several years, things that Americans specifically, but really everyone, no, Americans specifically, just because of what your money looks like, seem to be interested in what our money looks like. And ironically, the only bill I have on me is the green one. But we have the Monopoly money. So our bills are all the same size, unlike Europe, but the $5 bill is blue with, I think, Sir John MacDonald on it. The $10 is purple, and I believe it has, oh, they just changed it. They just changed who's on it. The 20 has the Queen. The 50 has some dude. I don't know. Whoever has a $50 bill. I don't know. And we have a $100 bill. Apparently we used to have a $2 bill too, but that doesn't exist anymore. We also don't have pennies anymore because it cost like 5 cents to make them. So it doesn't make sense to have them. So we got rid of them and it's been fine. World hasn't come crumbling down. We also, and Americans seem to really love this one, is we have toonies, which is our $2. And there's the Queen on this side, and then a bear on this side. And then we have a loonie, which is $1, and there's a loon on it. And Elizabeth on the back. And then we have, like, the quarters, which is, like, the moose. Oh, and we're technically the homeland of Shania Twain. That's our big claim to fame. I'm trying to think of Canadians that we're not embarrassed about. I'm not bringing up Justin Bieber. Shawn Mendes. He's new, and we seem to still like him. He's Canadian, too. And Alessia Carr. We gave you some good things, world, okay? So stop pretending we don't exist. Oh, also, we have had bank robberies, well, robberies, like national news, where people stole maple syrup. Sometimes we are a stereotype of ourselves. Oh, also, I saw a news article yesterday about a woman in Canada who thought someone was breaking into her house, and it turned out a beaver was breaking into her house. Okay, on a serious note, I wanted to go over, since Canada Day is coming up in like 2 weeks or so, I wanted to talk about Canadian authors, because I spent like a year struggling to find Canadian authors. Really, anything in YA is predominantly published by American-based authors, so it was actually like pulling teeth. I kind of slowly clawed together some, and we have some like kind of famous ones like Margaret Atwood. She's Canadian, but our stuff's kind of depressing and far too realistic sometimes. So I stay away from that stuff most of the time. But we do have other Canadian authors that are published. They're scarce. They're slowly-ish. I want to believe it's becoming more frequent, but who knows. So if you want to like Canadianize your July TBR, here's like a handbook. Alright, now I feel like I'm going to get shade for this, but I had never heard of this author until very recently, but he's Canadian. Guy Gabriel K. I want to say he's French with that kind of a name. By the way, like half of our country is French, but we still shade Quebec. Doesn't say where he's from, but apparently in 2014 he was made to the Order of Canada, which, I don't know, sounds cool. So, yeah. So, Guy Gabriel K. is Canadian. Leslie Livingston, the author of The Valiant and The Defiant, the third book, The Triumphant, is coming out in 2019. She is based out of Toronto, I believe, last I saw anyways. So, E.K. Johnston is also Canadian. I found out a couple, maybe not a couple months ago, but found out in like the last year or so. She wrote That Inevitable Victorian Thing as well as Spindlefire. This is the first book in, I believe, a duology. She works in several different professions last I saw. I think she was also like an archaeologist or something like that. But yeah, she's Canadian and I think also based out of Toronto. Basically all these authors are probably based out of Toronto or Vancouver. Speaking of Vancouver, Sebastian de Castel, author of, oh, they're in the wrong order, author of Spellslinger, Shadow Black, and Charmcaster. The rest of this what is going to be 6-book series is coming out in the next year, so I'm really excited about that. And he also wrote Traitor's Blade, which is this awesome adult quartet with lots of sarcastic knights and dueling. It's really, really cool. But he is actually based out of BC. I don't believe directly in Vancouver, because no one can afford to live in Vancouver, but in and around Vancouver. Oh no, I lied. It says he lives in Vancouver. I honestly don't know that this author ever made it big internationally, but Kelly Armstrong is a massive author in Canada. I actually don't think I've ever read anything by her. She's one of the few Canadian authors that I have like that. But she's really, really popular in the YA realm. She wrote the Summoning series. There's lots of like kind of shadowy hunter-y vibes. There's like werewolves and fairies and magic stones and secret societies and all that kind of fun stuff. Kate Borman is another Canadian author. She wrote Winterkill, Dark Thought, and the third one, I can't remember what it's called. It's got like fire on it. But they're fairy tale retellings, I believe. Yeah, this one's Red Riding Hood. Overall, I think it's Red Riding Hood fairy tale retelling. Haven't read these yet, but I actually heard pretty positive things about it. She's one of the few authors that I've seen online that she actually lives in Edmonton, which is in my province, but she's from the province of Alberta, which is just beside British Columbia, so not far from Vancouver. By the way, not far in Canada means still like a day's drive, because Canada's massive. We also get to lay claim to the author of Falling Kingdoms, Morgan Rhodes. She wrote, I think all 6 books are out now of the Falling Kingdom series, and then there's the spin-off series, Spirit Thieves. I've only read Falling Kingdom so far, and I didn't mind it. I actually kind of enjoyed it, despite the fact that my friend hates it. She's another author based in Ontario. Rachel Delaney is also a Canadian author. Clairvoyant is the first book of hers that I've actually owned, and I'm trying to read it soon. But she's got quite a few middle grade children's books to her name, which is something you'll kind of see that there is actually a decent amount of Canadian children's authors and children's illustrators, but that seems to very kind of drop off once you start hitting YA and adult content. I'm not totally sure why. One of the few big YA releases that has happened in the few years, The Last Namsara, is by Canadian author Kristen Cicerelli. She is from Niagara area, which is almost the United States. In Ontario, it kind of borders, where Niagara Falls and everything is. But she's Canadian. We get to claim her, I mean, look what we did with Laura Secord. Sure, she wasn't born in Canada. Canada wasn't even a country. But we claim her, and she makes delicious chocolate. By the way, I met her at an author signing, and she's very nice. We also had I'm not going to say it right. I feel so bad. Miratra. This is her debut book, though, to be fair, so hopefully I'll hear it more often. But Markswoman is by her. She was born in Toronto, or at least raised in Toronto. Now, I don't know if he was born in Canada, but I know he lives in Canada now. So, Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is the first book, and it's going to be a trilogy, I believe, last I heard banned. It's like a kind of like Knight's dark fantasy, but it's got to do with music and as you can kind of tell from the cover. So yeah, Nicholas Eames is based in BC. He's also an author I met, and he was very nice. A pretty big YA release that has happened in the last few years is the Rebel of the Sands trilogy by Alwyn Hamilton. I have not read this. I know nothing about it other than they did a stupid mid-series cover change, but I want to try and get to it, and I know that the author is from, actually I don't think I've seen anywhere where she specifically says she's from. No, I lied. She's from Toronto. Should just be my default. But she's from Toronto, and I know she has another book that she's been working on too, so hopefully we'll see that in the next year or two. A new release, All the Ever Afters by Danielle Teller. I think I called her something else in a different video before, but she actually does live in the United States now, but she was originally born and raised in Canada. We also get to lay claim to Heather Fawcett, who brought us Even the Darkest Stars, and the sequel, All the Wandering Lights, that's coming out in December. This is her first book, I think, actually, so she's kind of new on the scene, and hopefully we'll get to see more of her. The author of Serafina and Shadowscale, as well as Test of the Road is Rachel Hartman. She is also a Canadian author. Outside of the realm of YA, there's Madeline Thine, I think is how you say it. Do Not Say We Have Nothing was all over Canadian bookstores in the last, 2 years or so. It was up for, every award, shortlisted and longlisted. It was on Man Booker, the CBC Award, the Scotiabank Giller Prize. Coming out in October, we have The Light Between Worlds by Laura Wymoth, I believe is how you say it. I'm super excited for the cover, but there's princess, fairy tales, fantasy, YA. Coming out later this year is also Sanctuary by Karen Lix. She's actually Alberta-based, last I heard. Dare You to Lie by Amberlynn Natouche comes out in the fall, I believe, this year. I think she's now based in the United States, but I've actually talked to her online. She's actually based in the prairies, or was born in the prairies in Canada, which is for non-Canadians, is Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, where there's nothing but flat land and farm fields and oil rigs. Not Even Bones by Rebecca Schrafer is also on here. She is a debut author, I believe, but she's Canadian nonetheless, so yeah. This book doesn't come out till 2019, but I'm just super excited for it, so I'm going to include it. But Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau-Prato. I think that's how you say it. It's the first book in what is to be a duology. I've never actually read her stuff, but Rupi Kaur, she's massive right now for her poetry. She is Canadian. If you're looking for books by a Canadian author, but also an Indigenous author, you should really take a look at Richard Wagamese. He's unfortunately passed away in the last year or so, but he's written quite a few influential books, including Indian Horse, which is a big one that just had a film actually released. Also really big in Canada right now in the YA sphere is The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Desmalines, Canadian author, as well as Indigenous author. Alright, and quickly rounding up these last few, there is the book Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali, and she is based in Toronto, I believe. There's also Slight by Jennifer Somersby, and she is based out of BC. I would also really highly recommend David Alexander Robertson. He's written quite a few graphic novels, as well as just regular books. Most recently, he had The Strangers come out, and I'm really hoping to get to that one as well. He's a Canadian author, as well as an Indigenous author. And lastly, Danielle Jensen, who wrote Stolen Songbird series. She is based in Calgary, Alberta. Oh, I lied. This is the last one. Recent middle grade release called The Frame Up is by Wendy McLeod McKnight, who is actually an author based out of New Brunswick, which is the Florida of Canada. I'm gonna get so much hate for that one. But yeah, so those are some Canadian authors to take a look-see at, whether you want to, use them to Canadianize your July TBR or just, maybe organize your bookshelves differently to put the Canadian authors together, or I don't know, just, do something with it. Just FYI facts. Or maybe you just came here for the sassy, snarky comments at the beginning of the video. I don't know. You do you. I will link all of these authors to their Goodreads pages, as long as they have a Goodreads page, in the description down below, and also make sure to take a look at the links to my social media. If you follow me, I'll follow you back. Make sure to celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day later on this week. I believe it comes out, it's Thursday when it is, but there's lots of stuff going on, lots of places on the weekends, and also have a wonderful Happy Canada Day at the beginning of July.